I bet you whatever money you want, if you are a woman from an ethnic background watching this, you most probably feel inadequate somewhere. You most probably feel like a failure in one aspect or the other. And too much credit. I think we think men are sitting there looking at women and thinking, how do we destroy the peace of these people, these beings today? We don't. But the fights we are fighting within ourselves and ultimately between each other make them the winners, make them the powerful beings, because we end up allowing every single script patriarchy has laid out to unveil time and time again. Time and time again, we compete for everything. We compete for attention, we compete for love, we compete for success, we compete for everything. And who are the only people that win from it? It's only men. Embrace that. You can't really speak it out now. You want to be approved, you want to be accepted, you want to belong, so you fake it. And we've all done it. I'll be the first to admit that I've done that. I've done that. I've been in a setup where I've been in a church where they are preaching something that I'm definitely saying within myself, well, that's not going to be me. I'm sorry. And I listen to this, it will probably be like, no, that's not me. I don't feel that way. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know exactly what I believe in. I will urge you. I will beg you to take a minute. Think about this. When last were you really vulnerable with another woman?
Welcome to Unmasking the Patriarchal Feminist, the podcast. The modern day woman was raised by patriarchy, yet groomed to become a feminist. These two opposing ideologies are leaving us modern day women tired and confused. In today's episode, we are going to tackle yet another controversial aspect of this challenge in the hope to start a revolutionary conversation. Welcome to our podcast.
In today's episode, we're going to go right into it. We're going to burst the bubble. I will admit firsthand, I'm a patriarchal feminist, and we're going to dig into that and understand what exactly that means. And perhaps by the end of this episode, you too will identify as a patriarchal feminist. Well, I'll start by giving you a look of my background. Why am I bringing this platform here? Why am I finding the need to create this podcast, and who am I? I'm a young Cameroonian woman, born and bred, who left my country back home when I was very young. I was right on the cusp of turning 20 years old, and I left to go live abroad. And in this life, I had to figure out, from the upbringing that I had, pick and choose what would form the woman that I have become today. And I lived in the Western world, in a Western society, since that tender age until now. I'm not going to say how old I am, but until now, for whatever amount of time that is. And in this journey, I have found myself relentlessly pressed by these two sides of the world. On the first hand, having to figure out life by yourself, having to go through university, study, graduate, do postgrads, dream of a career, start building a career, creating this persona that was needed to build a career, grow up the ranks, evolve as a professional woman and really embracing the feminist persona, embracing what is considered, especially within the African circles, as being the typical feminist. I'll be first to admit that I am. I feel within my heart, and I identify as a feminist. I push within my thoughts, within my ideology, for the equitable rights of women. I do feel that today's society, there is not enough equity between men and women. There's a double standard when it comes to what is allowed for men and what is allowed for women. There is definitely a pressure, a much bigger pressure on women to perform in a certain way and to conform to a certain mold than there is for men. There's a lot more freedom for men to explore and to, lead and fail and grow and expand. There is so much more space than there is for women. Women are contrived and especially, again, I'll put that in the context of the African or ethnic communities in general. There is so much pressure about what a woman should be, which is not something that really happens to me. In fact, I would say that most men are maybe fending for themselves, if I have to go down that route, while women are expected to fit a certain mold very early on. So I want equity between men and women. I consider myself a fighter of that equity, and I would sit on any debate, any discussion, any conversation. I will fight, nail, and tooth and everything within, well, not physically, but definitely intellectually and philosophically. I will argue, I will counter argue, I will go on and on to defend these views and to justify why it is important in today's world for women to be considered equitable to men. Yet, within that space, I have also been a product of an African culture where from a very early age, I think my very early memories of my conversations with my mom were around what would make me an acceptable wife one day. It's so strange how, in our subconsciousness as ethnic girls from ethnic communities, it is so early that we are told to fit a certain mold. My very first recollections of, body image and body discussions were around being able to have a man with the body that I had. So this is something that is ingrained also very early on, the need to attach to a man, the need to, be married. You are told from 10, 11 years old to learn how to cook because you're going to go and cook in your husband's house. It is expected. It is there. It is rooted within our subconsciousness and even our consciousness that we must fit this mold. And the other side is we go to church. Most of us have been raised in church and we've been bombarded by all kinds of sermons growing up that laid the foundation for us to thrive, to be fulfilled within marriage, because it's also considered a calling. It's considered a calling within, the life, the destiny of a woman, the plan of God for women. So you can understand the stress that a woman from this kind of background, a woman that is from an ethnic background, that has lived within a religious space, whether it is Christian background or Muslim background, where it is laid in your deep subconsciousness and consciousness from a very young age that parts of your identity as a human being is tied to being able to acquire the love of a man, to be approved and chosen by a man, to be able to bear children. Yet on the other side, you have this pressing demand from the Western culture that you've attached yourself to, either midway through your teen years, or late in your teen years, or in your early 20s, or maybe you were even born within it, but you have this demand from this society to be this kind of woman. And the expectations are being bombarded in your face. So yes, I am a feminist. But what do I do with all this demand? What do I do with all this conflict? I cannot just ignore the fact that I was born told a certain speech, and that speech was ingrained into my subconsciousness and my consciousness from very early on. And parts of me want those things. Part of me, look at my house and want it to look aesthetically pleasing. Part of me want to have children. Part of me want to spend time with my children and be a homemaker. Part of me want to be a submissive wife and be taken care of by my husband. Part of me want to be tender and reliant on this partner that I've chosen for myself. But where do I admit that? Well, what ends up happening is one of two things. One, we live in hypocrisy in either setup. So when you be in your community setup, in your family setup, in your family-in-law, in your church, your religious setup, you will be a hypocrite, because part of you will not believe that model that they are painting there, that submissive woman, that person that is supposed to be 100% of a homemaker, that is, completely reliant on her husband, that just desires to have children. You will pretend to be that person to a certain extent and be a hypocrite within yourself, because part of what they are saying, what they are teaching, and what they are expecting of you, you reject it fundamentally because you were made to believe in something else. Yet in that setup, you can't really embrace that. You can't really speak it out loud. You want to be approved. You want to be accepted. You want to belong. So you fake it. And we've all done it. I'll be the first to admit that I've done that. I've done that. I've been in a setup where I've been in a church where they are preaching something that I'm definitely saying within myself, well, that's not going to be me. I'm sorry. It's not going to be me. Yet, I cannot say it out loud. I cannot say it, because if I say it, it's going to be seen as, a woman of the world, for example. Same thing happens, when you're going to be within your family-in-law, for example. There is this pressure within yourself, not even anyone else putting it on you, to want to perform, to want to look a certain way, to want to look traditional, to want to look compliant. And that is a hypocrisy, because when you're by yourself, you don't feel that way. When you're just with that man, you don't do that. So that dichotomy, you also feel it on the other hand. When you are in your pure intellectual setup with your girlfriends, with your colleagues from work, with your academic background, and at least entourage, you will never say there that you need a man, that you want a man. You will pretend over there that you need no one, because you are a girl boss, because you're a boss lady, because in that circle, admitting that desire within yourself will be the betrayal of the circle. You won't be cool enough. You won't be accepted in the circle anymore. You won't be part of that community. And you want to belong yet again. And as you want and thrive to belong and desire to belong, you find yourself pretending. You find yourself lying. You find yourself building an armor. So when are you truly yourself? And in a way, that was the first part of it. Though the first part is the hypocrisy that comes from it. The second part is the secrecy. It is the secrecy because ultimately it creates within us an insecurity about ourselves. We are constantly feeling like we are falling short. We're not good enough. We're not women enough. We're not feminine enough. We're not sexy enough. We're not attractive enough. We are not compliant enough. We are not, the list goes on and on. We are not submissive enough. We're not the best wives we could be because there is a part of us that is fighting this submission that we believe somehow that we must have. There is a part of us that is confrontational. There is a part of us that is independent. And we feel like in a way, if something isn't quite right, perfect within our relationships and our marriages, we think it's because of that aspect of us. So we feel like we're falling short. We feel like we fall short with our kids. We feel like we fall short because we are not able to do everything. We're not able to be the perfect homemaker that makes all the meals handmade, that is, responsible to the T, that takes her kids to all the activities, that is perfect at keeping everything looking shiny within the home because she also wants a career, because she also has projects. And we feel like we're falling short. And that sense of incompetence that we feel, and that touches also the professional aspect, by the way. We don't feel that we're good enough. We constantly feel like if we weren't married or we weren't mothers, if we weren't desiring of kind of a life, traditional life, maybe we would be able to thrive better within our professional life and be these accomplished women that will be forced to reckon with. Because within us, we also feel like, the greatness of a woman that is independent is by accomplishing things and, by, being a great blogger or an influencer or being a motivational speaker and being, all of these things. We believe them. We believe them to the core, to the point where it eats us from within. We never feel good enough. I bet you whatever money you want, if you are a woman from an ethnic background watching this, you most probably feel inadequate somewhere. You most probably feel like a failure in one aspect or the other. It could be anything. But there is an insecurity that you are masking and that you're constantly pretending about everywhere you go. At church, you are pretending to be a good girl that has all the pure thoughts and, is very, good and submissive and molded to the Bible version of what a woman should be. Yet within yourself, there is a conflict. You want to go out there and, scream to the world that you don't need anyone. So there is that part of you when you're in church, you feel incompetent. Same part feels incompetent when you're at work. Because part of you, when you listen to your colleagues, perhaps that are a lot more ingrained into the Western culture speak, you understand that you're lives away from them because their views on independence is far from yours. In fact, You even start feeling like you are very traditional and conservative next to them. And sometimes you feel a little embarrassed by that. And when you do, you kind of push yourself back into a hole, right? And that leaves you with a feeling of incompetence once again. So that constant, and when I say you, I want to be clear here. I'm talking about myself too. This is why I created this platform, because everywhere I go online, the only things I find is a loud voice from either side of the conversation. It is a loud voice from either being the strong, independent boss lady or this conservative, religious, pious woman that fits the cultural mold. And I kid you not, I'm pretty sure all those people that watch both sides and comment and are engaged and are, so engaged really in those two different sides, I'm pretty sure, I'm ready to bet they are also fighting within themselves their beliefs about the side that they don't belong to. We are all a product of that dichotomy. We are a product of that fight, of that struggle. And we are in a community that wants to chastise people, that wants to create circles, tight-knit circles. I belong here, I don't belong there. We live in a world that wants to choose all the time, either or. And that causes us to live in a constant state of pretense. We pretend all the time. The hypocrisy is draining. And how does that manifest itself? That feeling of incompetence leads us to not be able to speak our truth. We are scared. We are scared to be found out. We are scared to be read by other women. We are scared to let our guards down. And in actual fact, the little few times when we've tried to express our insecurities, our doubts, our questioning, we've been chastised. We've been screamed at. We usually turn first to the women that we look up to, our mothers, our sisters, our elders within our circle. They never allow you to have a moment of doubt. They never, ever allow you to have a moment of questioning yourself. They cut it short. They even cut the simple thought of thinking about it. They cut it short. And that causes a huge dilemma within our hearts where we learn very early on. I think it starts from the teenage years where you feel that struggle. You want to talk about it like, I'm confused, I'm worried, I'm scared. And very quickly, you are shut down. And you learn to fake it from very early on. And you grow up in a community of women at school usually that are also learning to fake it from their side. So everyone's faking it. And now we live in this world where we've never had as many platforms to converse and communicate online. There's big communities online, but in real life, women are so isolated because we have lived for years and years in secret. The secrecy is destroying us from within. The burden of pretense is destroying us from within. The insecurities are causing us to eat at each other. The moment we see someone else having the look of that freedom we seek, the look of that peace we seek, we destroy it. We go at each other. We end up being the tools that patriarchy uses to maintain itself. And that is the biggest irony of this whole conversation. And that is why I felt compelled to start this platform. It's been churning on my heart for so long because I think there is an urgency to speak the truth. We live isolated from one another. We live secluded within our own bubbles because we second guess everything we do. Between being the perfect feminist and being the perfect patriarchal tool, we are pressed and compressed, and we go further in, deep within the hole of hiding, further down deep. Further deep down, we go in hiding. The only people that win from it are men. And it's not even intentional. They don't even mean to win from it. I don't even think men care, to be honest. I think we give them too much credit. I think we think men are sitting there looking at women and thinking, how do we destroy the peace of these people, these beings today? They don't. But the fights we are fighting within ourselves and ultimately between each other make them the winners. Make them the powerful beings, because we end up allowing every single script patriarchy has laid out to unveil time and time again. Time and time again, we compete for everything. We compete for attention. We compete for love. We compete for success. We compete for everything. And who are the only people that win from it? It's only men. And the only reason we compete is because we feel incompetent. There is a deep seed of lack within us that is planted very early. And some of us, the work really just starts at acknowledging it, realizing that struggle, and understanding, even just facing it. Because for some people that might listen to this, it will probably be like, no, that's not me. I don't feel that way. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know exactly what I believe in. I will urge you. I will beg you to take a minute. Think about this. When last were you really vulnerable with another woman? Answer that question. Take a moment. Answer that question. When last did you allow yourself to be vulnerable with another woman? I'm pretty sure it's been a while. And what would you tell me? You've been burned. You've seen it. Why were you burned? Ask yourself, why were you burned? Why was that person betraying you? That person probably believes in women empowerment and girl boss power. Just like you, that's probably one of the things that kept you two as friends to begin with. But why on earth did that relationship fall off? Because one way or another, there was competition, insidious competition. And that competition stems from the fact that some part of us feel inadequate, feel not good enough. And the only way to fix every single thing that we complain about on all these platforms online all the time, from pressures of life, from, the demands of womanhood and how hard it is to be a woman, and the unfairness of, the life we live with men and all. The only way to really fix any of these issues is to start by acknowledging who we are. Start by acknowledging what is really going wrong within our souls, within our hearts, why we really struggle as much as we do to be real, to be truthful, to be ourselves. The journey starts by realizing that you, just like me, are a patriarchal feminist. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In the upcoming episodes, we'll be talking about similar conversations. We'll dig into why we struggle in friendships. We'll dig into the relationship dilemma. We'll dig into mother-daughter relationship. We'll go into so many conversations that are so needed. So stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, rate and review this episode, and make sure to tune in to our new episode next week. Until next time, it was the Boss Lady's Room.